We have a special guest with us, Mike McCann here, President, CEO of Limbach Holdings. Thank you so much for being with us. LMB, so we're taking a look at this. Tell us a little bit, you're here for a conference in New York, you've been meeting with folks. What are some of the trends and takeaways and themes?
Yeah, definitely here for a conference the last couple of days. And I think the themes is obviously what's going on with the E&C space in general. And I think for us, it's a great time to really discuss some of the differentiation for us. So key things for us is really, we're a company based on existing buildings, infrastructure upgrades. Sometimes I think even when these periods of pause happen, this is a great time for us because sometimes customers will look back and say, maybe it's time to go invest back in my infrastructure as opposed to build something new. So that's been a hot topic. And I think for us specifically, lots of questions come on tariffs as well too. And again, I think our ability from a quick hitting work perspective allows us to really, I think in some sense, encourage customers to make quick decisions.
Yeah, and I know you're also involved with data centers and automotive, and I mean, you have the gamut. But as I just talk about the big picture, is sentiment pretty good? Are people looking, when you work with the general contractors and you're working with the folks, they have to put the money up. Are they feeling pretty confident that they want to do a lot of this?
Yeah, so I think it's critical where you're at. So sometimes it's difficult from a macro perspective because we are a smaller company, but from our perspective, it's really critical what sectors are in right now. The buildings have to be mission critical. They can't afford downtime. So mission critical for us is defined as if it's a downtime call on Saturday, they cannot wait till Monday. So a couple sectors that we've really focused on, and this isn't new by the way, we've been focusing for a while, is healthcare, industrial, and manufacturing. We think healthcare is going to be very strong. It's been a tough time for healthcare coming out of 2020, but mission critical aspects of the vertical markets, I think, really critical in this time.
Right, and I think that's been a theme. I think I would agree with you that a lot of people are looking at healthcare, looking at industrials. As we talk about this, when you break it up, I mentioned automotive, I mentioned data centers, you mentioned existing buildings and properties. How does that break up?
Yeah, so
where do you get the most revenue, really?
We get the best revenue when we work in these critical environments. So it's different if it's commercial office building or K through 12 schools. Those are areas, I would say the last 4 or 5 years the company has drifted away from. I think no different. We have a mix shift story of shifting our revenue from existing building from new construction. So it's like we've been preparing for this from that standpoint.
Yeah, and tell me about the ODR model.
Yeah,
what does that mean?
So ODR equals owner direct relationships. Think existing building at that point. And our model is very focused on the account, critical accounts that have to spend, and we build teams around those accounts. And it's very much of a consultative type environment that we work in. It takes a long time to build those relationships, but once those relationships happen, once there's a critical problem and we're there, that relationship kicks off, and you've got a 20 or 30-year relationship.
Oh, for sure.
And sometimes it doesn't matter in these type of environments what's going on in the outside macro environment.
And also, if it's a critical mission where you really need to do some upgrades, really, whether it's a good economy or bad economy, you got to get to it.
They're going to make the repair no matter
what. Let's, when we talk about the tariffs, I had a conversation with a real estate person today who was talking about new home construction and how lumber coming from Canada. Is that something that you look at? Does a large portion of lumber come from Canada? Are we seeing materials that are going to be really tariffed?
Sure. So for us, we don't really do anything necessarily with lumber.
You're not doing that much
but
with that, right?
Copper, steel, aluminum, those sort of commodities, those are built into every aspect of equipment or buildings or existing infrastructure. Those have been impacted from a price perspective. Again, I'm glad we took the path that we have 5 years ago because quick hitting transactions is an ability to appropriately pass those costs along as opposed to long-term projects where it's much tougher at that point.
Yeah, and how do you differentiate yourself from the competitors being not necessarily the biggest guy in the business?
Sure. So a lot of times we will compete with OEM companies. It's dedication and focus to core customers, vertical markets, specialized labor expertise. From an acquisition perspective, we work on a complete integrated platform. It takes a lot of time from our acquisition integration, and we're not just rolling up companies. So our goal is to have attention at a local level and have a national breadth. and have the best combination of the two of those together. And that's kind of what makes our model special.
Yeah, I saw you had a beat on earnings, a little miss on the sales. What's the outlook?
Yeah, so our story has always been quality. 2024 record gross profit, net income, adjusted EBITDA grew 36% from 2023. So we're really excited about our path for super quality earnings perspective. And from our guidance perspective, we've purposely kept revenue down because we've been exchanging between the two revenue segments. So we're guiding to revenue growth for really the first time in a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I love hearing record gross profit. I mean, that's great. When you look at the margins and the numbers, can you keep up these kinds of trends and numbers? I mean, do you expect that next year you'll be able to say that again?
Two things with our margin story that's impactful. Last year we received 2/3 mix shift to owner direct. We still want to shift the business more. So as we shift the business, we're going to get a natural revenue rise from that standpoint. The other side of things is we're playing the long game from a customer base perspective. We prove value. Our competition goes from a contractor to a system solutions from like an OEM. There's going to be an opportunity from a margin perspective. So it's very intentional to try to capture that from both different levers.
Right, and of course you're watching all the headlines. I mean, you mentioned some of the tariffs. We're waiting to see more about a government shutdown. And we have Putin today saying, look, the ceasefire is the right idea, but I'm not sure. I have a few questions. Are you watching those kinds of headlines that maybe are not directly to your contracting business, but maybe to the overall economy? They're a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of those don't impact us just due to the fact we're always looking, having conversations with customers, and sometimes the conversations don't even involve, the mechanical and electrical systems. A lot of times we end up being a partner to them as well too. So helping them from a mitigation perspective, we talked about from a material perspective, what can we do proactively together to kind of partner with them? So a lot of times it's actually conversations with customers in that partnership approach.
I think also, I mean, it's worth noting, folks, over 6 months, the stock is up 11%. 1 year, the stock is up over 51%. It's off the highs of 107, but still one of the winners left around here, while a majority of the S&P 500, for example, are down 10% or more. When I think about, you mentioned labor and that being something that sort of sets your company apart, and it's not just labor, but the expertise of that labor. And do we need more and more skilled laborers in certain areas? If young folks are going to train, they should go to trade school maybe and become an expert, because a lot of the older guys are retiring. I mean, you spend a lot on this, right? Yeah,
it's a fantastic trade, and we need more people to be in the trades. The decisions that a young person makes, I mean, it's a wonderful career to be had. I think the biggest thing from an impact going forward is that super skilled, specialized, working on specialized equipment. That is going to be a job that's going to exist no matter what happens.
Right.
And that need for that training, exposure, partnership and apprenticeships programs are super important, as well as exposure and having mentors. So I think the specialization is going to be super important. Even as technology develops in our industry, that technician working on the complex piece of equipment, technology will help them, but that job's still going to be there, and we need that skilled person, and we need people in the trades.
That's an interesting point. So AI is not going to take away your specialized trade.
It's going to be a long time before that. To me, it's like the one industry where you feel like it's going to be there.
Right.
And we need the people turning the wrenches, and AI and the technology will just assist them to be more efficient.
Yeah. Mike McCann, great to see you, President and CEO at Limbach Holdings. Thank you very much, Mike, for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.